Hey everybody, this is Grace, and what I have on my mind lately involves when you think things are, just plain like a job or something, and there's nothing, like mysterious about it, and then you find out that there is, or or you find out that there's some. It doesn't have to be a job even. But you find out there's some weird connection between two places, two businesses, that nobody knows, nobody talks about. You think nobody knows, you find it out, you figure it out, and you tell somebody else, and they say, yeah, you're right, it is weird, something like this, and then people start to doubt it. People start to wonder. This is on my mind because it's happened to me not a whole bunch of times in my life, but it has happened. Hey, to just go back a few years in comparison to how old I am, it was probably the first one was about, I'd say 15 or so years ago, and it was a set of them that I had worked for, these places that were owned by different corporations, and I'd worked, basically I did some volunteer work, and then I tried to find a position in one of them, and basically I'd work and then say, not doing this one, and then we were actually, it required a certification, and in the class we were taught that's pretty much what you have to do. You go from one to the other, you do some volunteer, go one to the other work, and find out if it's where you want to be. Okay, a lot of people think that way anyway. But as I did that, I learned a few things. Like, one of the first ones was they had, I didn't return to it. I was going to do some volunteer work, and a woman, I was with one of my sisters, my younger sister. We had went to some place together, and we got a phone. It was for New Year's celebration, and I got a phone call from this place like way late at night, and the two women, I guess maybe they had been drinking or something, and they said that they had they found what, because you had to fill out an application even to do volunteer work. That's a good thing. And I'm leaving out the kind of thing on purpose. And they called me and they said, you have to put things like your education, your this, your that, some references and all that. They said, you want to work here? And it was right before midnight or so. They were laughing and laughing. It was two women at least, and they were probably drunk at work. And my sister was with me. I was telling her, and we were laughing so hard. I mean, we were laughing at it, but at the same time we were kind of a little freaked out, that somebody actually, people like that would be calling, and it was right before midnight, and that they would actually have access to, the name, address, phone number, this kind of thing. So, well, I definitely would look at it that way at this point, because of something that happened on a job sometime later, of a woman telling the whole place, they were on break, we were all on break. She just started talking to herself out loud, and about how she got the phone number, address, and name of a customer she had worked in the past at a call center, and somebody she just didn't like, seemed prejudiced. She just didn't like her. So she got that customer's name, address, and everything. She was telling everybody. She was actually like talking to an invisible person, because nobody was standing there. Nobody had asked her anything. Freaky. So at this point, I definitely would say, anybody doing that, you got to be very careful. These places need to be more careful. But there's more to that. To that one. And it wasn't until, I don't know how many years later, I actually got a job years later, okay? I actually got a job at that place, and it was like, oh man, I don't even know what to call it. It was a nice place, okay? It was a nice place, but the people working there, they were scary. I mean, 5 years or so later, you would think they're no longer there, that kind of thing. You know, where I live, it's like revolving door jobs. You know, people just, you know, you get it. They're in and they're out. And at that place, those 5 years later, I found out one of the reasons why that it was so bad. And I can't even say it. I cannot say it. Really cannot say why. But there was some major issues that needed to be taken care of. And nobody was taking care of them. I was not in a position to take care of it, to have it taken care of. And these are people who, they made sure they had access to your name, address, phone number. So if you did try to take care of it, they were going to come after you. And I was informed of that by a woman who worked with me. She informed me that she basically said, you need to run, you need to get out of here, that kind of thing. You don't want to work here because this is what happens. And I ran across one of them that tried some stuff on me. She wanted the position I had, and she threatened me. And I mean, she threatened me. It scared me so bad. I was afraid to even go get my purse and to get out of there. I mean, and I'm a woman who's not really scared of people, but this woman was scary. This woman, her to be so bold as to threaten somebody. Okay, I mean, I'm talking, she was talking physical damage threat. And I think I was totally stunned. And I was afraid to get, like I said, afraid to go get my purse and my keys and get out of there. Okay. And there was so much more to that story. But yeah, you know, you learn some things, you know, along the way. And anyway, in that whole field, I finally gave up. It was just so bad. The places were good, but the people working there were bad. And I'm talking consistently. And I had never in my lifetime experienced something that bad, that consistent, that field being so bad. And for example, I got hurt on the job, and I did what you have to do. You know, I got hurt on the job, and there's a protocol. You know, in place, you have to do this and that and the other. No matter whether you want to or not, you must do it. So I did it. Next thing I know, they're letting me know. They're from their corporate office. They called me, started laughing, and said, we're not going to do anything. We're not even going to send you the paperwork. We will never, ever give you anything for being hurt on this job. And they laugh and laugh. I'm like, this is scary. I mean, the whole thing, the more and more, it was like darkened. It was each and every place, it became so, like you're walking into evil. A really dark place, dark people, in the way that they see things. Never in my life before nor after have I ever experienced anything like that. Okay, never. And, well, I can't say that. That was pretty dark. But when I worked as a graduate, when I was, a career student at the university, undergraduate and graduate school, and I worked as a interim office manager for surgeons, orthospinal neuro surgeons, and also did billing for other places and so on. Now that's a pretty dark field, but in a different way. it's in a way of the mean girl stuff. Mean girl, mean boy. It wasn't just females, but mean girl, mean boy. You know, it was a hostile working environment. You know, somebody was always trying to be up on the totem pole they erected themselves. You know, they were trying constant. You know, just oof, a very negative feeling of going to work. But this other one was scary, downright scary. Okay, so what? I don't even know why. I'm leaving out what this field is, and it's senior living communities. I don't know why I'm leaving it out, so why am I? So I'm not going to. But yeah, it was senior living communities. And I was there as a activities director. And some of them, one of them, like one of the places, and it was such an eerie thing. Like, one of the places, it was, what was it? It was a small place near, not too near here, but near enough. And not where I live, but a couple of cities, or suburbs, north of here. And it was kind of a little bit off the road, away from that other city. It was kind of a small town, in other words. But they told me that what they would pay me to be the director was minimum wage. Now that is a way that they can get out of paying people to do the job, because nobody will do it. They don't have to pay anybody. They can continue to say that they cannot find anybody who will take the job. So this is what I was told. So they say they're going to pay minimum wage for a director's job. You see? And you have to really think about these things through. Wow. And there is so many stories I can tell about the different ones. So of course I didn't, jobs I applied for, and then what they would say over the phone, they had no no problem saying things that you would think would say, hey, they're admitting to doing something that, if it's not illegal, it should be. Plus some of this, I don't know the politics behind it, but there are some things they have to have, but that's how they get, like I was saying, that's how they get around it. But still, at some point, that would catch up with them. Okay, that would be a problem for them. You see, and they didn't care. They really figured, probably the whole revolving door job kind of thing, that, hey, in the meanwhile, they were going to do this. And oh my gosh, while I'm sitting here, it's triggering me to remember so many of these, like the interviews, and finding out, like, one place I worked at, the man that was interviewing all of us, he was a younger guy. He was the executive director, and we didn't know that he was about to be fired. I mean, we were just there for an interview, and what he was doing, I don't even remember the details about it, but he was hiring people, like me. He hired me and other people, and kind of like he was taking his anger out on us because he had been let go or something like that. He was the executive director, and he was just, he had his, they gave him how many weeks or whatever before he was let go. He knew it. He knew he was going to be let go. Okay, so, and he hired a bunch of us, leaving us in a mess, because I don't even remember the details about it, but he knew that that's what he was doing, was leaving us in a mess. And everybody he hired And so we would be fired immediately or let go because the people, the big wigs, would say, hey, what's this, all this? Well, we had walked into a mess. You see, it was, I don't even remember exactly all the details, but I found out somehow, some way found out about it. And I quit before we got there or something. It was so long ago, and it was kind of scary, spooky, because I remember he kept calling me at home. I guess what he was trying to do was trying to find out, you know, if this had happened or that had happened, that he had set up bad things to happen. Okay. Seriously, deep, dark. And then I could tell the story about one of the places I worked at, that the staff there didn't want anybody in management. The staff there wanted to be the ones running the show. They didn't want any kind of management. They didn't want an executive director. They didn't want a nurse. Okay, the nurse, these were the CNAs, certified nurses assistants. They didn't want a nurse. They didn't want the executive director. They didn't want a life enrichment director. Who else was there? There was a man, he was a maintenance director. And there was also one that came from their corporate office, and she was the business manager. They didn't want any of us there, anybody in any power position. And they did a variety of things. Like one of the women, and right when she met any of us, she called human resources and said that the next person she met, that they're prejudiced against her. I don't even know what country she was from. Yeah, I didn't get to know her. And after I was let go all of a sudden, and at some point I found out that she got fired because she did that at every place. And she was a shuttle bus person. She'd go from location to location, you know, different days of the week, and she'd do that to everybody there too. And she was on a power kick, and how fast she could get people laid off. And I was hired by their corporate office, and the woman called me and said, what happened? And I told her, and she said, I hired you. And I said, I know. She was an older woman than I was at the time. She was probably my age, what age I am now, or older even. And she was livid. And I told her, let her know what happened. But there was even more, there's more darkness to that. Also, the staff, I mean, I'm a person who can connect the dots. I'm really good at it. And they were doing some remodeling, and so my office was moved into one of the rooms that used to be it used to be an apartment for patients. And but that room became the storage. And as time went by, people were telling me the reason was because, you know, had something to do with somebody dying in it and all this stuff. Well, this was a senior living community. Probably every room had somebody die in it. You know, but they were doing these things because they were intentionally. Okay, you might think that it's all me. No, I was warned by a man he was like in his 70s, and he was a resident there. He warned me from right when I got there. He goes, you don't want to work here, leave. And I said, what, really? He said, they will do you harm. You know, something like this. And I was just, you know, when you're just shocked. What? I just started working here, and here this man, he says, trust me, you're going to want to leave here. And but that's what they did. What I gathered from it was they took that room and made it a spooky room on purpose. And they did, like I said, I'm not a fool. So they started doing things like I'd walk out of the room to go somewhere, and when I would come back, things were moved. Okay, including wheelchairs. That they had a couple of wheelchairs in there, which you could say they came in and got the wheelchair and used it for something. No, it was not enough time. And I mean, like, I walked just right down the hall and came right back. They did not have time to take a wheelchair and use it and bring it back. This kind of thing. There was a laundry room right next to it, and I'm imagining they were either in there or, they were the laundry person. Okay, they told them to do it, and they would just move it. They had 2 wheelchairs, and they would move one of them. Okay, and then they would do stuff like along this line, and thinking they were going to scare me somehow. And I mean, I've heard some of this too, so it was psycho ward. Really, it was something else. There's so many stories there too. I could tell. Unbelievable places. Like I said, very dark. Very, very dark. And you'd think these are senior living communities, and some of them are very, very expensive. And what these people pay to live there. I'm having so many flashbacks. Oh my goodness. Really, sitting here. Yeah. So, anyway, I think that's enough. I was going to talk about more, including, about how I figured something out. But I think this is getting kind of long, or maybe not. But how I figured out some of these that were supposed to be separate corporations, and then found out, I'm not so sure. They were, of course they could be, this corporation bought out that corporation and stuff like that, but they would use the same, unless they used the same things for, what was left over from the original corporation, like pens, paper, things that said the corporation on them, they would use for the next. Would they continue to use? I would not think so. Maybe that's what it is. What it was. But there were other things too. Their training, their whatever it was. And people back then were saying things like, they explained why they did this, and it was actually just this and that. People had their views, or some would say conspiracy theories, and along this line. And we all know that some conspiracy theories turned out to be true, and some of them were a bunch of BS. So there was a lot more that are BS than there have been that became true. And I mean, but something like that these are actually corporations. They're just changing their name. The same corporation, or they just sell them to someone, and they keep doing this lather, rinse, repeat, for whatever tax purposes. People come up with all kinds of stuff, tax purposes, and this kind of corruption, that kind of corruption. We don't know. We can't say for 100% for certain. And is it going to make any difference if we did? That kind of thing. People come up with a lot of stuff like that. So during that time. But there was some even more creepier things there too. I think the one that was the 2 was the woman that, she was a bully. The one where the woman threatened me. I mean, she was butch, very, aggressive looking, and her whole attitude was, she is in control. She was young, a lot younger than me, and she is, bully. A mean bully. And what was the word I was actually looking for? But yeah, she let me know that she would beat me up and she would do me harm, and like I said, that was the place that they had known my name and phone number. They 5 years before, and called me like that, laughing, saying, you would want to work here, ha ha ha. And I was going to do volunteer work. There was also something about a woman named Wanda there. I don't even remember the stories. Like I said, it was probably around 15 years ago or so, give or take. You know, it didn't all happen in 1 year. But it was some creepy, just so creepy what some people do. That work in these places, and you gotta say probably, you know, that's where you know you're going to see death at some point. And I do remember there was one woman. She was one that nobody would talk to. She wouldn't talk to anybody. She wanted nothing to do with anybody. And I got her to be, you know, I talked to her, you know. I wasn't like these other people, so I think that's why she warmed up to me. And I wasn't purposefully doing it that way. I was just being myself. And she did warm up to me. And I felt really bad, you know, after they set me up to fail, is what it was. I don't know, I probably quit. But I remember them setting me up to fail. And I felt so sorry for that woman. She was she was a resident. And she was going to be all by herself again, you know, not trusting these people. And that man that said, you know, you're going to want to get out of here. And the executive director there, she, at that one, she was having, I don't know, she had her boyfriends, at least one, I don't know, it could have been many. She would have one of the rooms set aside for herself and her, I guess, boyfriend or whatever. And she was the executive director. Okay, she lived far away from there. She lived, well, it was probably, I'd say, well, it could be a 2-hour drive each direction. And, or a little less, but depending on how fast she drove. But so I'm thinking that some of the time she stayed there, well, she would have her boyfriend there too. At least we could assume that was her boyfriend. And she was so bad. She was one of those, had to be center of attention. And of course, you know, she was executive director, but she'd ask things in meetings like, she asked one woman, what is your age? In front of all of us in a meeting. It was an African-American woman who was older than I, and I knew how old she was. She had told me. And the woman said, she said, you have no right to ask me that. She said, well, if you don't tell me, I'm just going to go look it up on your paperwork. That was the executive director. I'm telling you. But that place, oh my goodness. And that wasn't the only one. There were so many weird things that would happen. And so I think it was the last one that I did was the one that the woman threatened my life. You know, she threatened my life, really. And because she had a thing going on there, was what it really came down to, because that one woman had warned me. I just didn't know what to do with all that. You know? And so basically, if you didn't play the game, then if you look like somebody who was not a liar, not a cheat, not a who wasn't going to be in on that, who wasn't going to let them have their way, and it was bad. I'm just going to put it that way. It was really bad. And then there was something about a woman named Wanda, and I don't remember what it was, but I remember how creepy it was. And so that's all that stuff is, you know, long ago. Yeah, long ago, and long enough for me to not even think about it anymore. I would never do it again. No, even as a volunteer, no. You know, so much power plays and all that. So, anyway, maybe another day, maybe some other time I might talk more about these, or where I was going to talk about. I just went with my own flow, and plus there's stuff going on in the neighborhood. It's got me a little distracted, but I'm a little more clear these days since I've been on this medication. Today is what, day 17? I've been on this medication for a physical health condition, but you know, between the health condition itself causing some kind of brain fog, and then the thing that the health condition causes, diabetes, brain fog, and now I'm on the medication for the health condition. These are clearing up and a little less brain fog, and much easier to concentrate. So far, it's got a ways to go. This is something that takes years to finally get to some sense of, some back to normal. And anyway, I don't mention what that one is. I'm gonna wrap this up.